Well, hey there, and welcome to Wedding Planning Simplified. I am Amy from Unmistakably You. I'm an educator and wedding planner here in London, and I'm here with my best assistant today. She is here to help us talk about expectation versus reality. So, if you've been with us for a while, you know that every Sunday we go live at 1 o'clock and we talk all about experiences you may be having and issues you may be facing in your wedding planning. And we try to help you navigate them with hopefully some grace and your sanity intact. So, we've been doing throughout the month of August a series called Honest August, where we've been shining a light on some of the issues that I don't think a lot of people talk about often. And we've been dropping some truth bombs. We'll drop a few more today. And the idea here is not to shock you, not to discourage you, but to hopefully just provide you with some honest information that you're not going to get from the not wedding planning book or whatever it is that you are using to help guide you through your planning. So we're on a rolly chair, having a little issue here. So if you are here with us live, hello, thank you for joining us. I always invite you to ask questions or just even say hi in the comments. We're always happy to chat. And if you have caught this on the replay, post your questions and we will respond in the comments, or shoot me a private message or an email, amy@unmistakably.you. Yes, the cutest co-host is back. I think you're upstaging me here. So today we are here to talk about expectation versus reality. And this is kind of a difficult topic because we live in such a visual world with media at our fingertips constantly. So between Pinterest and Instagram and the perfect selfie with the perfect filter that makes your skin look smooth and glowing and all of those things, it can really sort of skew our vision of what is actually realistic. And add to that, that in most cases, if this is the first wedding you're planning, your experience of weddings has probably been consuming all of the media coverage of celebrity weddings. Maybe it's attending weddings as a guest, whether you're friends or family, but perhaps not being very involved with the back end of the planning or not really paying much attention in the moment to the mechanics of the wedding around you. It may also be shaped by what you expect based on just your restaurant experiences. You're throwing a lot of money at your wedding day. You are hiring presumably a caterer or a restaurant to feed your guests. And why wouldn't you use your experiences at restaurants in the past to shape your impressions of what to expect? And the unfortunate thing is that all of these play together to skew your expectations. And it is really hard to know what to expect when you're thrown into planning a wedding for the first time and you don't really understand that it's different than going out for dinner at a restaurant. You don't really compute that that beautiful photo that you're seeing on Pinterest is from a styled shoot where that photographer or the planner or the decorator, whoever was behind the shoot, they only decorated one table. So of course they put a $500 centerpiece on it because they only had one table to decorate, not 20 tables. So it's very easy to have expectations that are a little bit unrealistic. And add to that the amount of emotional investment of time and financial investment. And you're very close to this wedding. You're going to expect perfection. And if the basis of your expectations is not reality, then when you get to the day of the wedding, you run the risk of that lunch bag letdown where you've built up everything in your mind to be absolutely perfect, and then it's not for one reason or another. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about kind of how weddings work in terms of the logistics of your time commitment, your financial commitment, and the end result. Now, I used to be, when I when I had time to watch TV, used to be a pretty big HGTV junkie. And if you're familiar with Sarah Richardson, she is an interior decorator from Toronto who does beautiful work. And she has this awesome, hilarious assistant named Tommy. So if you're familiar with that, you may be familiar with his triangle of interior design, which I have blatantly stolen. So I am giving credit to Tommy here. But it works for wedding planning as well. So the basis of this is that there's a triangle of factors that play into your interior design experience or your wedding experience. And so the points of the triangle are cheap, good, and fast. And the idea is that you only get 2 out of 3. So you can have it cheap and fast, but it won't be good. You can have it cheap and good, but it won't be fast. And so if you take that and filter it through a lens of wedding planning, essentially it still works. However, we're probably replacing some of the good or some of the cheap with effort and energy expenditure on your part, on your behalf. So the unfortunate truth here is that you are going to get what you pay for in most cases. And so if you want it to be good and cheap, you're likely going to have to put in a lot of effort to fill in those gaps between what you're paying for a vendor and the service that they're delivering. If you want it to be fast and good, it's not likely going to be cheap. And if you want it to be cheap and fast, unless you put in a lot of effort on your part, it's not going to be good. So if I were more of a math nerd, I would have some kind of an equation here that has, like inverse proportions and things like that. But what I can tell you is that the quality of the vendors that you're able to hire is likely going to determine the quality of the wedding unless you can make up that difference somewhere. And where that difference is going to come in is in the time, the pre-planning, the effort, and the materials that you supply to fill in the gaps of those vendors. Now, in a perfect world where you have an unlimited budget to plan an amazing wedding, you're going to be able to have everything done really well. And those expectations that you have hopefully will be met, because if you can hire a decorator like the quality of what you're seeing on Pinterest, then they're going to be able to give you that visual expectation. If you're hiring the best caterer in town, they're going to follow through and they're going to be able to give you that fine dining experience, even in a tent on the back 40. But if you're not independently wealthy, chances are pretty good that you're not able to afford this Cadillac option in every category. And that's a reality. I get that. I'm not independently wealthy, and most of my clients aren't either. So what the trick here is being able to adjust your expectations so that you're not disappointed on your wedding day, and to set priorities so that you are very satisfied with the things that are really important to you, and that you have adjusted what you're expecting in those other categories, or you've appropriately filled in the gaps to create the expectation. And I hope that that kind of makes sense. So let me just give you some examples here. I'm just going to go through a few categories of wedding vendors that you're probably going to be dealing with, and just kind of highlight a couple of things. So the first category would be the venue. So the venue, of course, is probably the most important determining factor in the feel overall of your wedding. And if you hire a DIY venue, like a barn, or if you're doing a tent, in some cases, they can be more affordable, not always. And we've talked in the past about why tent weddings are not cheaper than hotel weddings, for instance. So look back in our archives if you want to see that video. But generally speaking, a DIY venue is going to require an awful lot more of your time in the context of decorating it, of pulling together a vendor team, and generally putting together the puzzle pieces. More affordable venues often are not as well maintained. So you may find that you've booked maybe one of the cultural halls around. And the sad fact is that a lot of those halls were built back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s when the community was really robust and it was supported by the financial contributions of the members. But as society changes, those types of halls often aren't supported by the members anymore, and they may have fallen into disrepair. Your affordable venue may not have the flashy facilities that a more pricey venue might. It might be a little bit more dated in terms of its decor. So putting more money into a venue will likely get you a flashier, fancier venue, but not everybody has the money to do that. So if you don't have the money to do that, then expect to put in the time and effort in sourcing decor and ways to basically make up for the shortfall of the venue. In terms of catering, here's another big one that's going to really affect the guest experience on your wedding day. If you're hiring a more affordable caterer, chances are very good that they're going to be less full service. So maybe they don't even set your tables. Perhaps you have to have the wedding party do that on the day before. A lot of more affordable caterers won't touch anything that they don't bring. So if they don't provide the glassware or the linen napkins, they're not going to clear them. So you have to fill in that gap somehow. You have to hire extra bartenders or extra service staff so that you don't have tables that are littered with dirty napkins and glassware all night. A lot of more affordable caterers won't do plated service. That's also dependent on the venue and how much prep space they have. But if you're going with, let's say, a food truck option, lots of fun, really interactive for your guests, probably more affordable than a traditional caterer, but also keep in mind that they're not bringing a full service staff like a traditional caterer would. So are you going to fill in those gaps somehow? Are you going to have to hire servers to bus the tables so that your guests aren't having to clear their own garbage? Those are things that you need to either adjust expectations on or account for on the back end. Bartending is another big one. I can't tell you how many of my clients have friends who are smart served, and that's awesome. But those friends who are smart served or who work at a bar that you used to work at with them, back in college, chances are pretty good that they're not equipped to bring all of the bar supplies and to give you an accurate estimation of what to purchase. So we find this all the time where we're running out to buy more vodka or we're running out to buy more ice because there isn't that accurate approximation of what to buy. We also see our couples often having to set up the bar in terms of providing the hard bar supplies, things like bowls for the garnish, knives and cutting boards, bar cloths, jiggers, pour spouts, corkscrews, that kind of thing. And not that that's a big deal. And if you've hired a more affordable bartender, adjust your expectations, prepare in advance so that you have all of that stuff in a tote ready to go. But just be aware that that is something that you're going to have to think about if you are hiring more affordable bartenders. In terms of music, we see a lot of couples who are hoping to save some money on a DJ or a band by running their own music through a playlist. I have seen it work very well, but the amount of time on the back end for the couple was astronomical in creating that playlist that their guests are going to want to actually listen to. You also have to think about the equipment. Are you then going to have to rent a sound system? Do you have someone who's capable of connecting it all and making sure that it's working properly? Who troubleshoots it if that sound system isn't working? Are they providing a mic for speeches throughout the meal? Throughout what about your ceremony? Your guests want to hear the words that you're speaking to each other without a DJ or a band there who's in charge of that tech. You also run the risk of guests hijacking your playlist. I've seen this happen too, where it's not playing what they want. So they think, oh, I'm just going to go put on a different song. And all of a sudden now you have dead air or your computer crashes. So again, if you're looking to save costs by not hiring a professional DJ or a band, adjust your expectations and prepare on the back end and know that these things could happen if you're not prepared for them. In terms of floral, lots of people want to do their own floral. I've seen it done well. I've also seen it completely stress out a wedding party on the week before the wedding. I've also seen wedding parties who just don't know how to properly condition and feed flowers, so they're dead by the day of the wedding. If you hire a more affordable florist, just know that their stock might be older. They might not have the same skill set as a more experienced florist. And I actually had this happen yesterday where there was a very large arrangement that was meant to sit on the floor in front of the head table. And it was front facing because the back was backed up to the head table, but it was so front heavy that it would not stand up straight. Wasn't a big deal. I was there. I grabbed some rocks out of the garden and I weighted it down in the back and it was fine. And the couple never knew it was an issue. But those are the kinds of things that you need to have someone on site to deal with if you are hiring vendors who perhaps aren't as experienced or as qualified or aren't providing you with as much full service. So that florist dropped off the arrangement. And by the time I got there, it had toppled over onto the dance floor. So I fixed it. And that was okay. But you need to have that expectation that things like that could go wrong. In terms of the decor, this is something that can be a huge time suck on your behalf if you're not hiring a full service decorator. And it's something that a lot of people enjoy, but it's also something that a lot of people don't fully think through when they're in the year prior to the wedding. You're pulling together different colors and linens and stationery and all of that, and it's going to be lovely, but people often don't think through the time that it's going to take to set up, and more importantly, the time that it's going to take to tear down. Who at the end of your reception at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. is going to be sober enough and desiring to tear down all of that decor, to pack up all of that stuff into someone's vehicle, because your venue has to be clear. Who's going to manage that? Whereas if you've hired a full service decorator, that's their job. You can just literally finish your last dance, take your Uber back to your hotel, and be done with it. Hi. Finally, just to touch on photography, I see in Facebook groups all the time people asking for affordable photographers. And this is a personal bias of mine that I try really hard not to push on my clients, because I've had my wedding and I understand that they have different priorities than I do. But for my money, investing in a really great photographer is one of the most important things you can do, because that's your lasting memory of your day and you don't get a do-over. So if you've hired, and don't get me wrong, everyone needs to start somewhere. But if you've hired an inexperienced or less talented, more affordable photographer, what if your shots are blurry? What if they miss the first kiss? What if their angles are bad? What if the light is unflattering? So these are things that you need to think through. And if you've decided to hire a student or to have a friend capture your wedding, adjust your expectations and know that you are not going to be looking at those Pinterest-worthy photos that you would get if you paid $4,000 or $5,000 or $7,000 for a professional who's at the top of their game. So all of this is to say that I understand that there are not Scrooge McDuck silos of money in all of your backyards, presumably, and that you're not necessarily able to hire the best vendor in every single category, which is why I'm constantly harping on setting priorities and being realistic. And so if you've made food and photography a priority, that's great. You should expect that you have that experience that you've seen on Pinterest or that you've experienced in a 5-star restaurant. But know that if you've then, on the other side of things, perhaps went more affordable or DIY with decor and florals, just adjust those expectations that those are not going to be the Instagram-worthy photos that you may have seen that maybe inspired your decor vision. So unfortunately, it is a universal truth that you do get what you pay for, but I also know that reality steps in and you have other things going on in your life. Maybe you're saving for a house, or maybe you're having a baby or getting a puppy. And so that's why we want you to be realistic in your expectations, to set priorities that work for you and your partner. And hopefully you can come out with a wedding that meets your expectations because those expectations are realistic. You have an amazing day and you have the beginning of a beautiful marriage. So thank you as always for joining us. We will be back live next week. And I don't know what I'm going to talk about yet, to be 100% honest with you, because it's a busy wedding season and I haven't planned that far ahead yet. So if you have questions, if you have things that you're struggling with, help a sister out and send me some of those questions, because I would love to talk about what you want to talk about and help you out with your wedding plans. So thank you for joining us here today. You want to say bye?
Bye.
Have a great week, and we'll see you in September. Oh my gosh. Take care.